Okay, this is part two of the November 1st, November 2nd video, which is wrapping up my 13 days of Halloween. The 13th day of Halloween is indeed November 1st. November 2nd is the Day of the Dead, so I'm tacking it on, so I guess you could say it's 14 days of Halloween, but it doesn't have quite the ring. I was speaking about some films here. I mentioned The Virgin Spring, and now I'm dealing with November. I did have some props here prepared. November, like I said, it's an Estonian film from the 2010s, I think 2016, 2017, and it's kind of based on a novel which is based on Estonian folklore. How many movies do you hear that come out of Estonia? Now, I mentioned that the Virgin Spring, I think, was nominated for and possibly won the Best Oscar in 1960. This movie was submitted to the 90th Annual Academy Awards as the official foreign film selection of the country of Estonia, but it was not nominated as one of the films that actually, were nominated for the award in the final running, which, that's typical. But is it good enough to get into those awards? Well, I guess it depends on what stock you put into the Oscars. I personally don't put much, but when a movie I like is recognized, I do think that reflects good on that movie. It gives that movie a wider legitimacy to people who might not otherwise watch it, and it gives the actors and directors and writers more work. And so I've got to say there's a plus side to it. Of course, it's just they don't really dig very much. But the year that I believe it was 2017, yes, the year that Logan and Get Out and The Shape of Water and several genre movies were nominated for Oscars that year. So that was quite gratifying. I believe Jordan Peele, he did win Best Screenplay for Get Out. And of course, this past year, Parasite was nominated and won a ton of awards, including Best Picture, not just Best Foreign Language. It also won Best Picture. So, so now people are seeing these South Korean films that some of us have been crazy about for years. And even I came into it relatively late, but I'd say, my conversion was probably my strong conversion to South Korean brilliance of their cinema came with Old Boy, which I first saw in 2000 and I want to say 2005. It sounds about right. So that's 15 years I've been obsessed with these movies. My good friend John Allen, I kind of stoked his interest, which was already there in these South Korean films, and he's incredibly savvy in them to the point where he's seen a lot more recent ones recently than I have. I also have a good friend who lives in South Korea, Stephen Ko, and shout out if you're watching, Stephen. And he, of course, is another great savant of cinema and music and art in general. So I went way down the rabbit hole with no one to reel me in. So November, upon a recent watching, like as in today, it's not as incredible as I remember it being, but it is still more distinctive than the first time. The first time I saw it, it kind of lingered with me, and I decided to get the Blu-ray because it was really cheap, and it was apparently going out of print for a while. So I kind of snapped it up, and definitely don't regret it. And it's a very nice looking movie. Really, the crux of the plot, if you want to call it that, yeah, it does have a plot, but it's basically that there's kind of some kind of prophecy or something, and the young girl who's your lead character, she lives with her father. Her father's the one who cobbles together the Krats, the beings I mentioned in the last video. And, very, very little about the movie can top the first, few minutes where the Krat is constructed of these long sticks. I can't really tell if they're supposed to be hard wooden or metal, and they have metallic implements at the end of each one. Like one has a sickle, for instance, and so those act like hands and feet, and it's got three, so it's not even bilateral symmetry here, much less anything like humanoid. And then in the center, all the yarns strung around the limbs, so to speak, which go up and bend kind of once like a spider. Uh, they meet in the middle as a terminal point, and in the middle, he's put like a cow skull, I guess, to give it some kind of identification as a living creature. But like I said, it contains the soul of a once living human, and it can speak, albeit limitedly, through this little hole in this little metal object that he's cobbled together in the middle of it under the skull. So that's the first Krat we see, and this thing goes and it basically it kidnaps a cow. I mean, I'm not making this up. This really happened in the movie. It kind of hobbled around like this, spider-like, and then kind of like a spider missing some limbs, and then it threw some chains on the cow, and managed to somehow see it has this incredible force, even though it really wouldn't have the leverage to do any of this. But since it's imbued with this magic, it does so, and it ropes the cattle with the cow with chains, and then pulls it, and then uses the three uh, limbs like helicopter blades, and it lifts the cow into the sky, flying like a helicopter, and brings it to the man who created it. um, but that was what apparently people in legend used it for, was to kidnap like livestock and steal things and do other things. But the Krat has to always be working. If it's not working, like doing labor like that, it will turn on its creator and may kill him. So he has to destroy the Krat. There's a way to destroy it. And all brilliantly shot. All of this is like incredible, beautiful. Like it's definitely got that Markita Lazarova look to it. From there, the movie kind of goes up and down, but the main character, the female, is kind of destined to have this relationship with this young guy, and both of their mothers are dead. And in this film, the spirits of all the dead people routinely visit the town, and the mothers are no exception. And they talk to them, and they seem to be in varying levels of cognizance. This girl's mother has quite a bit of semblance of humanity to her, albeit she's rather cold. But she's the spirit. And they're dressed in all white with these giant white hats. It's very odd looking, but very cool. I mean, the way it's shot with the black and white is very cool. So anyway, this movie kind of plays out against the backdrop of that weird town with all these beings. The devil is lingering around the corner, and he has something to do with the creation of the Krats, and the spirits that come back, like these lovers, mothers. They are part of this kind of chain where they're linked up to the process where the devil will manage to get someone's soul. And our main character, her father, tricks the devil by putting like I think it's some kind of blackberry. I'm not saying the substance correctly, but 3 drops of it, and fools the devil into thinking that's blood when he signs each contract for a soul. So I'm not sure how the devil is that gullible, but that's apparently from the legends also. So that kind of makes sense because they're often absurd, kind of like dreams almost, I would recommend this one to check it out. I don't really want to give much away of it because I think part of the fun of it is exploring like what the hell is going to happen next. Yeah, check it out, November. I did have another prop here, and I didn't show you the cover of Virgin Spring, but it's too late now. But here's the last folk horror one I'm going to talk about. V. It's pronounced V. That's the name of the movie. Not the V or the Viz or the VI or the VI. It's the V. It's V. Just V. And it is a Russian, by the way, just, spoiler ahead here. That's a V. This lumpy being here. So either keep that in mind, or if you avoid spoilers, erase it from your mind immediately. But I'm going to go and talk about it some. This movie is really hilarious. It came out in 1967, and it is, a Russian film, and it's really one of the finest Russian fantasy films I've ever seen. And they had quite a number of science fiction and fantasy films that are really virtually unknown over here in the West, and it's a shame. I mean, everyone knows, well, not everyone, but most cinema savvy people and science fiction fans know Stalker, or at least know of it, by Tarkovsky. But beyond Stalker and Solaris, also by Tarkovsky, a lot of this stuff is not penetrated. I mean, you can find a lot of it on YouTube, though, and sometimes it doesn't have subtitles, but it's worth seeing anyway. A lot of times it does have subtitles. Um, for instance, I found out by exploring this that Solaris by Tarkovsky is a remake, and later, of course, it was remade by Steven Soderbergh. So that's been made 3 times from the same novel by Stanislaw Lem. In any case, I have one of the movies I'm going to talk about in a few minutes playing in the background. I hope it's not disturbing everybody. It's kind of distracting, but also kind of amusing. Um, so there's this, there's like these monks. And they're very devout, Christians, and this young guy, and his name is Coma Brutus, and he has like the bowl cut and everything, like the monks, and he wears like the robes, but he's like a young kind of. He's trying to be a good, faithful monk, but I mean, he has some weaknesses. He likes tobacco. He likes alcohol. He likes them quite a lot. He's he's virginal, though. At one point, he within 5 minutes tells the same character A that he's completely virginal, and B that he's getting laid with all these women in the town. So maybe the truth lies in the middle somewhere. But anyway, as far as his order is concerned, he's virginal, and he does seem very naive, and not like the smartest guy in the world. Very likable. He is sent on this mission to give the last rites to the daughter of a nobleman who has just died in this town. I believe it's in Kiev in Russia where he goes. And I don't know if Kiev is a town or a city, but that's my ignorance there. Um, and so uh, his order, the rector who runs his order, he sends several, all older guys who are part of the order to go with him. And I don't know if they're kind of his backup or to chaperone him or make sure this gets done. He doesn't know why he's been picked. There's a reason, though. Early in the movie, this movie's interesting because the fantasy elements that are so strong visually, um, some of them occur in the first few minutes of the film, and then most of them occur in like the last several minutes of the film. And then there's a few little interludes of it building toward the end. Uh, so a lot of this is like waiting around for something supernatural to happen, but it's engrossing because it's kind of entertaining. This repartee he has, Coma has with these older guys, these old Russian guys, and they're all talking about Cossacks and drinking vodka. It's all very Russian, and essentially, they take a wagon and they go to, you know, um, this town, and this guy's always trying to get these people to like him by cracking these jokes, and they usually fall flat. Though some of them are funny. He mentions how the wagon they're in is so spacious inside that it could probably fit like I forgot what he said, a dining table or something. Something that it obviously couldn't fit, but he's exaggerating and he's kind of chuckling saying it, and then it kind of goes flat with the other people, kind of like me saying it here probably just did. So Coma's a cool guy. He means well. He does. Basically, he runs into a witch early in the film. It's like your typical stereotypical old gnarled, crone, and for some bizarre reason, this crone takes him on a trip on her broom with her broomstick as the flying device. She's not flying on the back of it. She's actually on his back, and she's holding the brooms, and the broom just propels them up. So, um, Yeah, it's really strange, and he's disoriented, and he's not even sure it really happened. The last thing that he knows is that when they crashed uh, from being up in the sky, the old crone turned into a beautiful young woman, and then he ran and he split. And I don't think he's even sure if he dreamed it or if it's a bit too much of the vodka because he's really, kicking it back in this movie. Um, and I don't know. I'm sure everyone here has had vodka at least once, and if not, then it's strong as fuck. So, um, and some of us have a taste for it. It has a very powerful buzz to it. Um, and of course, Russians love it. And Smirnoff vodka is, a big brand. It's Russian. It's really good too. Um, so Koma is enlisted to do this thing, to read these rites to this dead girl, and she just died, and her father, the nobleman, is like really distraught, and Koma's basically like, "Hey, I'm not qualified to do this. I can't. You're gonna have to get somebody else." And the nobleman isn't having his kind of antics. He's like, "You've got to do this." He's like, if you do this 3 nights in a row, stand vigil over her coffin and read these rites for her salvation, uh, I will give you 1,000 gold pieces. If you do not make it through the third night, uh, you'll get 1,000 lashings and you'll probably die from them. And they're agonizing. So he tells him this after he spent 2 nights there. And after 2 nights, he's like, I'm never going back. And he gets really drunk and he's like, I'm not going back. I'm never going back. And the reason he's never going back is because when he's reading these rites, well, first of all, he recognizes the dead daughter as the girl, the crone who turned into a young, beautiful woman. It's the same being. And he's confused as to what the hell's going on, but he's not. It's not like he's going to ask the nobleman or even tell him because he's like, no, I don't know her. I don't know because she asks for him by name before she dies. So the nobleman's like, how does she know your name? And he's like, I have no idea. I've never seen her before. But he has, of course. And essentially, um, he he lies to the nobleman, and then the nobleman's like, I don't care, what the reasons are. She told me this was her last wish, and you're gonna do it, or you're gonna get those fucking lashings. So the first night, her tomb opens, and she comes out and acts extremely strange. She's kind of staring ahead, almost like she's blind, but not quite. Like she's kind of looking out of the sides of her eyes. She's not looking at him or like what's directly in front of her that she's walking towards. She often has her hands up like this, and so she haunts him a bit, and he draws a circle, like a sacred circle on the floor, because apparently these monks know a good bit about the occult and the supernatural. So he draws this circle around his little rectory where he's saying the things, or podium, whatever it's called, and that does protect him from her. She can't get through. She does the Marcel Marceau kind of Jodorowsky thing where she's like feeling it and she can't penetrate it, and she's banging and can't get through. So she concedes that he's won that night. She doesn't say anything this whole time, by the way. Um, Second night, she levitates her coffin and uses it to bang back and forth on the circle's force field. And of course, you don't see a force field, so it is like miming, but it's pretty wild that she's like flying in the coffin in the air, banging this, trying to break it. Um, it's surreal, and so he's freaked out by the third night. But after being threatened, the older men like drag him drunkenly there. He drunkenly draws a circle, and he starts to ask God to protect him from all these evil things. And she's not having it, and she comes fully to life, I guess you could say, or unlife, and she does her own little ritual, and she does begin speaking, and she summons all these monsters, all kinds of strange, surreal, bizarre looking creatures. The effects are great. The makeup is great. They are totally wild looking and unhuman. And she jumps around a lot. She does this a lot when she's doing the ritual. She's like jumping up and down. There's a lot of weird movement, like in the scenes like where she's circling him with the coffin. She's going around and around, so the camera is going round and around like this, and then just it's so kinetic. And compared to the kind of calm level of the movie for like half of the movie or longer, this is just like frantic, and she is a frantic character. I don't know this actress's name. I'm going to research it, but she's just like gorgeous and evil, and she looks like she's having a great time. And she's like, I summon all the vampires. I summon all the werewolves. And actually, I don't really see any creatures in there that really strongly resemble what you think of as a vampire or werewolf. But I'm going to take her word for it. And she's obviously the mistress of these great creatures. And finally, she's like, I summon the V. And V comes, and he is a messed up critter. And, like I said, he's on the cover of this thing. He's kind of like a big lumping kind of, almost like a Jack Kirby 50s monster character. And you think he should be named like Gordus or something. And he passes judgment on our man here, and he's going to destroy him. And things kind of don't go well after that. The cock crows in the morning and the monsters scurry away, but yeah, things haven't gone too well for Coma Brutus. But I'm not going to give away the ending, and the ending itself is ambiguous anyway. So you've got to see this movie. I wish I could just show you a ton of stills, or I had a fancy rig where I could edit together scenes and stuff, but I'm doing all this on the fly, really guerrilla style, primitive like, and yeah, so all I can do is hold up the covers of the Blu-rays cases. So yeah, it's about as high tech as I get, and I can do these cool movements like where you can see my library back here of Blu-rays. I didn't mean to get that out of shot there. So I'm going to move on to November 2nd, tomorrow, and that's going to be the last day of this. And that's basically, Dias de Mortis, Muertos, whatever, and beyond. That's what I called that day, tomorrow, November 2nd, the Day of the Dead. And to celebrate, I'm taking the title that I came up with literally, and I'm watching The Day of the Dead and The Beyond. And right now, Day of the Dead is playing. This is the third of Romero's zombie films, and it got a kind of took a beating when it came out. A lot of people hated it, disappointed with it. I'm not really sure what they were expecting after the apocalyptic Dawn of the Dead. But basically, the years have been very kind to this movie. The effects are probably the best out of the four films as far as the way the zombies look and the gore effects. And there's a lot of ingenious plot devices and twists and turns. So your main character, Sarah, played by Laurie Cardille, is like a scientist, and basically she lives in this underground compound because above ground is too dangerous to live, and essentially now the zombies outnumber the humans 100,000 to 1. That's what they say. That's almost staggering to imagine that, but apparently it's true. Humans are dying off, and becoming zombies, and so regular living humans are in the minority now. And this is a heavy movie. It's pretty dark. It's grim. It has some humor because the villain, Captain Rhodes, is so over the top that yeah, he's amusing. But it's a pretty heavy movie, and it's kind of like they're nearing the end. This could be nearing the end of the human race, and so it's a military operation. It was put together really fast, and then the scientists kind of serve under the military who run the place, Captain Rhodes being the leader. And there's like 3 or 4 scientists. Well, there's 3 scientists, yes, who are working on this. There's Sarah, And then there's another guy played by John Amplas, who was Martin in Romero's film Martin, and also the father in Creep Show that wants his cake. And yeah, he's a cool guy, and I've talked to him before. And the third scientist is played by Richard Liberty, who is previously a weird character in The Crazies by Romero, and he's Dr. Logan, but Captain Rhodes calls him Frankenstein. Frankenstein, and he's always like throwing these bizarre threats that are almost like aphorisms at the set Frankenstein, and he's always constantly outraged and strutting around. And Joseph Pilato plays this part, and he's a classic character. This is one of the classic villains of horror movies. He's totally human physically, but he's foul beyond belief. And ironically, on the other end of the spectrum, Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Logan, has tamed a zombie. He's even named him Bub, and he's kind of been able to either stir or discover this zombie's rudimentary memories of his past life. And so Bub starts to mimic things that were important to him in his past life. I mean, that was done in a primitive way in Dawn of the Dead. It's why they were at the mall. Like they say, hey, they remembered something that was important to them. Bub, so Bub is distracted from constantly just eating people with all these intellectual challenges Frankenstein is throwing at him. And Frankenstein's kind of working out his own childhood psychosis, parent problem, parent-child trauma on Bub. Of course, nobody really realizes this for a while, just how messed up he is, because he is pretty brilliant and he has made progress, but Sarah's very skeptical, and she thinks this is all like theoretical, and we need to get down to it, quit worrying about how this happened, and what are we gonna do? What are we fucking gonna do, man? She doesn't say that, but to me, that's what she's saying to both Captain Rhodes and to Dr. Logan, that this is all well and good, but we're running out of time and people and supplies, and of course Rhodes is fine. He's got plenty of bullets. Another problem, another disadvantage that Sarah has is she's the only female in the entire compound. So these extremely nasty military thugs under Rhodes are, make a lot of lascivious comments to her. They also threaten to murder her, and they're just generally, really charming dudes. And she has a boyfriend who's actually one of the military. Her boyfriend, though, there doesn't seem to be much intimacy there. They must have had some kind of decent relationship before this movie started, but it's kind of crumbled, and he kind of has this pathetic need, dependency / hatred of her, and he's very fey. It could be the actor just didn't know how to bring forth a performance, of a guy who's in a relationship with a woman like this. But she's such a strong woman that he's all intimidated, and he comes across as more gay and more effete, almost too much to even be in the military, really. But I think his character's weaknesses, it pays off later. And then there's a very, very, to me, still very shocking, grisly scene involving his character fairly early in the movie that shows just how much steel Sarah has in her veins, just how much stronger she is than all these guys, even though she's taking its toll on her psychologically, but she makes some decisions that nobody should ever have to make. And man, so her solace is, I think his name is Cassidy. He's like a Irish drunk, and he works with the military and in kind of an ambiguous part, but he's kind of the sidekick to John, and John is a Jamaican pilot, and Rhodes nicknames him Flyboy, just like Peter nicknamed Stephen Flyboy in Dawn of the Dead. And he's a black character and another strong black character. He's the only black character in the movie, though. And so he is one of the three protagonists. Cassidy is kind of just support, but John and Sarah are really the crux because her other scientists meet some other ends, and Frankenstein, his whole thing unravels when Captain Rhodes discovers that one reason that Bub is so tame all the time is because, you know, Frankenstein is feeding him some human remains that are still kind of wet and goopy. And it turns out to be their former leader that Rhodes inherited the post from. And as Dr. Logan says, he's doing us much more good now than he ever did alive. And so this movie's a trip. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty essential. To me, it's one of the essential horror films. It's one of the seminal modern horror films. When I say modern, I mean like in the last 30, 45 years or so. The post 60s era, maybe even you want to say post 70s era as being modern. To me, it's like early 80s to now would be modern, to me. So in that sense, it's one of the finest horror films of the last 35 years. And it came out 35 years ago. So it has fared well. Its following has grown, and now it's very respected, and it's given as much weight and gravitas as the first two installments in Romero's Dead, what was a trilogy and now is a quadrilogy, and it deserves it. So check out Day of the Dead. Did I show you the Day of the Dead? This is the Shout Factory / Scream Factory. They have the brand new art on the front. Inside there's a reversible deal. Since the disc is in the player, I can show you. You can reverse it and get the artwork from the original movie poster. But this movie, there's Bub right there. He even learns how to fire a gun, or remembers how to fire a gun, thanks to Frankenstein. Sorry I keep calling him Frankenstein, but it's too amusing not to. It's Dr. Logan is the character. But yeah, this is a classic, man. The darkest day of horror the world has ever known. So first there was Dawn. I think the trailer is like, first there was the Night of the Living Dead, then there was Dawn. And now the darkest day of horror the world has ever known, the Day of the Dead. So yeah, I can watch this over and over, really. I don't have quite the love and affection for it I do Dawn or Night. It's not on that level for me as a personal favorite, but it is still easily in my top maybe 75 movies of all time, which is really high considering how many movies I'm into. So let's move on and wrap this up. So November 2nd, the Day of the Dead, this is the last movie I'm going to watch, and I haven't started watching it yet. The Beyond. You knew I was going to get to Lucio Fulci eventually, right? Have I mentioned Lucio Fulci on this show? I may not have. Well, I'm obsessed with the guy. I think he's one of the great underdogs of Italian cinema, if not the great underdog of Italian genre cinema. He had a terrible reputation when he was alive, at least until his last few years. A lot of horror fans I knew in the 80s, which I wasn't really a horror fan until the 90s, horror films, they talked a lot of trash about Fulci. Like his movies were slack, they were gory, and that's all they had going for them. But all of that is just complete, hyperbolic, bullshit. Fulci is a great craftsman. Some of his last few movies are slack. He had very low budgets and waning interest in some of the scripts, but The Beyond is kind of his peak. He did a trilogy of films that are very Lovecraftian. We'll go with that again. City of the Living Dead, House by the Cemetery, The Beyond. And Beyond is really like the centerpiece of those three movies, and to me, it's the finest one. A lot of people's favorites are one of the other two, and that's cool. They're great too, especially City. But the Beyond to me is like the seminal Fulci film, the way it's filmed, the way it's the way it's shot, the way it's scored by Fabio Frizzi, um, the kind of surreal imagery, the strange kind of weird dislocations of time and space, um, just an eeriness, a strangeness. Um, it's not a slack movie. I mean, it's not serious like Romero's movies are, to where it seems quote unquote realistic, but it's on a higher level than quite a lot of Italian genre films are. I mean, it's certainly deeper and more serious minded than any Italian cannibal movie, and probably most giallos and a lot of spaghetti westerns even. Um, that's not to say that it's mainstream or that it's dull or anything. It's just it's well done. It's well crafted, well executed. The two lead actors, Catriona McCall and David Warbeck, are excellent. They dub their own voices and they do a fantastic job. They the material is treated as worthy of respect. City of the Living Dead is nearly as well crafted. House by the Cemetery is a little slacker and a little less friendly to an audience that isn't, addicted to Italian horror like I am, and probably some of you guys are. But The Beyond strikes a great balance to me, and to me, it's poetic, it's surreal. Um, Essentially, it's a hotel that's supposedly built over the seven gateways to hell, and when one of those gateways open, hell on earth. And in 1927, I believe, there's a warlock who lives in the hotel. His name is Schweik, and the rednecks from nearby, this is in Louisiana, the rednecks from nearby New Orleans come and crucify him and toss burning lye on him. Um, he didn't do well in Louisiana. He didn't luck out and get any Creoles or jazz musicians. He got just the kind of scum of the earth, crackers there who were like, you damn warlock. And so, yeah, um, Liza is his, not Liza. Liza is Catriona's character. Emily. Emily is Schweik's, I guess, assistant or disciple in magic. It's hard to say, but she's in the hotel when it happens, and she's reading from the Book of Avon, which Schweik has learned all of his knowledge from, and he's kind of warning people about the seven gateways. And it bursts into flame, and you don't know if it's literal flame or just being artistic, because then the credits come on and the amazing, beautiful credit theme music. And but in a way, maybe it is literal. It's supernatural, but because after that she's blind, and after that she might be dead for all we know. She reemerges, in 1980, and that's what 53 years she's been gone, and she comes to the hotel to warn Liza, who's bought the hotel or inherited it, I think, from some kind of relative or something. And she decides, I'm going to fix it up, and what the hell, do commit myself to something, because I've been kind of a bon vivant dilettante, and she goes into detail about that. And somebody gets hurt on the because there's lots of weird occurrences happening there, as you could probably guess. Someone gets hurt on the grounds, and Dr. John McCabe comes and he's making house calls. Um, I'm pretty sure that with Fulci's cinema savvy, that John McCabe is, an homage to and possibly seriously a descendant of John McCabe from McCabe and Mrs. Miller. You'd have to ask Sean Lee Levin about that. He's the creative the creative mythographic genius of the crew here. So, essentially, I love that word, essentially. Uh, the Beyond it's a difficult movie to describe, but it's one you have to experience. Um, I had the pleasure in 2018. Suspiria came to Charlotte, and these kind of movies never used to come to Charlotte as regular film movies, much less like repertory or art house or event kind of things. I never thought I'd see Suspiria on the big screen, and they had just done the new 4K Scan Master from Synapse, and yeah, that was a great experience. I went with two of my buddies, and that was cool. But a couple months later, it was almost Halloween. It was the week of Halloween. I want to say it was the 28th of October, around there, 20 between the 27th and 29th. I posted a whole thing, a whole album of it, of my pictures I took from it, from the event. But basically, it was part of this tour called Fritzy does Fulci or something like that. And Fabio Frizzi himself, the guy who scored The Beyond and some of Fulci's other movies, he's just a brilliant like Italian prog rock uh, music maker. He brought like a seven-piece band, like a kind of a prog rock band, not like a symphony or anything. Um, and he brought them to this place called the Blumenthal, which is like Charlotte's ritziest skyscraper, devoted to the supposedly to the arts and also to just but it's usually a lot of kind of wine sipping, kind of people are going there to see a play or opera or something, or something that's pretty mainstream. Maybe it's good, but it's like maybe Wicked or something is going to have an engagement there. So I'm just giving an example of a big play, Cats, maybe. Um, so the Beyond was shown on one of the upper floors in this theater, and they played the whole movie and they edited down out the music, and Fabio Frizzi and his band performed the music live to the film that fit the film, in every scene, even though there were a few tiny instances of improvisation within some of the instrumentation while it was going on, which lent a really immediate and fresh kind of vibe to it. That was an event. That's one of the greatest nights of my life, I have to say. I went by myself. Later, at the end of it, I found out a friend of mine, Sam Shapiro, who's a really awesome film critic who lives in this area, and has been a good friend and influence on me. Uh, Sam and I, had some drinks and talked about it with another friend of his, and man, it was amazing. Sam has seen a lot of really wild and extreme movies, um, especially Asian ones. But he had never seen The Beyond, and wow, I don't think he knew what to make of it. But I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like I'm adding this now to my repertoire of cinema tropes, and uh, you know, basically that was the best way to enjoy this movie. But I watch it at home. I probably watch it 2 or 3 times a year at least. And I finally got this Blu-ray. This is the Grindhouse releasing Blu-ray, and they did a similar slipcase job as they did on the Cannibal Holocaust. And this is just incredible poster painting here. That is John McCabe, and that is Liza, and that's Spike crucified. That's how he looks nowadays. It hasn't aged too well. This is not much on the background. It also comes with the remastered original soundtrack by Fabio Frizzi. That's the sign of Ebon from the Book of Ebon. This is Spike when he was still living, though I think he expired a few minutes after this when the lie hit him. And then inside this is one Blu-ray that's the feature film. Where's one of the Italian, the kind of the classic Italian poster. L'Aldila, it means the beyond. The real name of the movie is E tu vivere nel terror l'Aldila. So it's in one of the songs. Actually, those lyrics, E tu vivere nel terror l'Aldila. So and what it means is, and you will live in terror. Dot dot dot. The beyond. They shortened it to the beyond, which was probably wise. Anyway, there's a whole extras Blu-ray too. Some of this stuff carried over from the Anchor Bay release. This came out on DVD, and it came out originally in a metal tin, which I did have. I had two of them, and one I gave to a friend, um, one I had bought, and then I got another one free as a promo when I worked at Borders Books and Music. And I recently, oops, I'm not supposed to say that, am I? I recently, I don't have it anymore. Um, so, of course, Borders doesn't exist anymore, but still. Um, so what happens in this movie? Well, Emily warns Liza, and John helps them out, and the zombies rise, and it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And it becomes a point where you can't really distinguish reality from a dream. And the ending, it actually stunned the fuck out of me the first time I saw it. Excuse my lingo here. Um, I think it's one of the greatest film endings ever. My friend Bill White once called it the greatest horror film ending ever, and he may be right. And it was strongly mimicked, shall we say, in the movie The Void. So if you've seen The Void and not The Beyond, you have a tiny taste of kind of the idea of what happened. But if you've seen The Void and not The Beyond, I don't know. There might not be any hope for you, to be honest, but it's okay. I mean, I'm still going to be your friend and everything, but you should really watch The Beyond. That's The Void is okay, but Beyond is an essential experience, and I think Fulci's Lovecraftian trilogy had a strong influence on Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Uh, I could go into that another time, maybe if I ever review Prince of Darkness, because I have that on Blu-ray too from Shout Factory. So wow, I'm gonna exhale. I've been talking like over an hour. This is my longest video. Well, this part right here is not, but combined with part one is, yeah. So it's epic length. I've talked about 5 movies: The Virgin Spring, November, B, Day of the Dead, and The Beyond. I recommend you watch all of them. Some I recommend more than others. The Beyond I recommend probably the most. Day of the Dead I recommend the most. Of the folk horror ones, I would recommend the V the most for what an experience it is. But for just pure great cinema, I'd recommend Virgin Spring. And November, I would put as kind of a modern curiosity, kind of a consequence of the wave of folk horror that kind of became popularized with The Witch. So it's definitely worth seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. These 13, actually, with tomorrow, will be 14 days of Halloween. It's been incredible, and I really appreciate everyone's support. And I appreciate your patience while I kind of drone on and lose my place sometimes and go on these interminable tangents. I'm making all this up as I go along. There's no script, there's no rehearsal, there's no notes in front of me. That's why occasionally I forget key things like a character's name or whatever. I can only retain so much, but I can retain a lot, and I want to share it with you guys. So happy Halloween, happy Day of the Dead, and love you guys. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye.